You were born in 90s Mexico, a time when hope was tanking faster than the currency. Your bio-dad dipped when you were 3, so your mom filled that void with a stepdad whose only talent was turning oxygen into booze breath. To him, you weren't a son. You were an unrealized asset. His business model was simple. He'd dump you at a busy intersection under the blistering sun with one goal: 50 pesos a day. Today that's pocket change, but back then that was triple the minimum wage. If you came home 1 cent short, dinner was a beatdown. But you quickly realized that relying on charity is a trash ROI. Why wait for a handout when you can just take it? You stopped begging and started reclaiming. While other kids were crying for nickels, you diversified your portfolio into petty theft. Fast hands, baby face, zero regrets. Thanks to that grind set, you never missed your quota again. You learned lesson 1 early in this world: nobody gives you anything, you snatch it. One day, your sticky fingers lifted a treasure from a distracted suit's pocket. Not a wallet, but the OG gray brick of first-gen GameBoy. For the first time, you actually had agency over something in your life. You got so hyperfixated on those green pixels that you completely blew your $50 daily quota. That night, the beatdown was a given. Bruised and humiliated, you crawled into a corner to find peace in the game, but you made a rookie mistake: you forgot to mute the volume. That 8-bit chirp alerted the beast. He snatched it. For the first time, your fight or flight chose fight. You swung back. The result: another brutal thrashing and an immediate eviction to the cold-ass streets. Starving and wandering, you hit a bus terminal for shelter. You saw a driver toss a stack of unused tickets. Boom. Your criminal brain saw a market gap. You could flip these. But there was a technical bottleneck: you needed the official hole puncher to validate them. The next day, you pulled your first social engineering hack. You hit a driver with that innocent orphan energy, asking where to buy the tool for a school project. Humans are always the weakest link in any security system. He gave you the address, you went there, and 5-fingered it. The setup was complete. Time for the big play. With that stolen puncher, you had free rides for life. But you can't eat bus tickets, so you decided to disrupt the market. You started flipping those passes to neighbors at a 90% discount. Business was booming. For the first time, your pockets were heavy. That's when you found your calling. You realized hard work is for people with no imagination, while scams are infinitely scalable. At 12 years old, you weren't dreaming of toys. You were manifesting home ownership. But every financial bubble eventually pops. Your operation got red flagged. You were dragged to the precinct, and the cop asked the most terrifying question possible: who is your legal guardian? Your blood went cold. You knew if they called your stepdad, he wouldn't show up to bail you out. He'd show up to deliver a punch-flavored "I told you so." In that moment of desperation, your criminal mind leveled up. You stopped being a petty thief and became a method actor. You summoned surgical-grade tears. You built the perfect narrative. You weren't the mastermind. You were the victim. You told the cops your stepdad forced you to steal, that he ran the ticket empire, and he'd discipline you if you didn't hit your numbers. You gaslit the system by blending the undeniable truth of his abuse with the lie of your innocence. The cops looked into it. The neighbors confirmed the screams and the violence. Your plan worked flawlessly. The police saw a helpless kid, not a mini Bernie Madoff. Your stepdad got cuffed, and you were tossed into the foster system. Fate swiped right on you. You were placed with a young, rich, infertile couple. You didn't just dodge jail, you just pulled off a massive social glow-up. In your new crib, you had everything you ever lacked: hot meals, high thread count sheets, and parents who basically worshipped you. But what really snatched your soul wasn't the family bonding. It was that beige box on the desk, the PC. This thing was light years ahead of your old gray brick. You became a total shut-in. To feed your curiosity, your parents hired a private tutor. Biggest L of their lives. He taught you the syntax, but you unlocked God mode programming. A world where you were the architect and the laws of physics were whatever you coded them to be. Then came the dot-com boom. You realized a hilarious truth: most people treat their computers like magic toasters. They had zero cyber hygiene. To test your theory, you cooked up some malware disguised as a digital love letter. Human stupidity and curiosity did the heavy lifting. Over 100,000 people opened that email looking for a secret admirer, but they got clapped instead. Their screens locked into an infinite loop of an animated cat shaking its ass. You didn't ask for a ransom. Money is mid when you have total power. You just wanted to humble the world from your bedroom. You went on an absolute rampage exploiting human error instead of software bugs. You were catching so many bodies that the press gave you your first title, the Twerking Cat Hacker. One day, you got bored of catching small fry. Your ego needed a real challenge, so you aimed at the biggest predator in the ocean, the CIA. But you didn't use supercomputers or Hollywood lasers. You used something much deadlier: patience. With a few lines of code and some deep OSINT open source intelligence, you started digging into the private lives of the top brass. You discovered a hilarious truth: the world's most powerful spies have trash OPSEC operational security. You found pet names, home addresses, phone numbers, and anniversary dates. These tiny digital crumbs are the keys to the kingdom. You chose your target, the director of the CIA himself. This was your masterpiece of vishing. You used voice modulating software. You coded yourself to sound like a burnt-out middle-aged guy. You called his ISP's tech support. The operator was an underpaid drone just waiting for their shift to end. They hit you with the standard security questions, and thanks to your research, you had all the cheat codes. In under 5 minutes, you pound his account and reset the password. Now you had total access to the spy-in-chief's personal email, and there it was, the Holy Grail, a leaked SF-86 security clearance form. This document had the social security numbers, medical histories, and dirty laundry of thousands of field agents. You could have sold this to a foreign power. You could have nuked the entire US intelligence network, but you didn't. It wasn't about the bag. You just wanted to leave your tag on the wall to prove you were the smartest person in the room. The next day, you started data mining. You weren't just scrolling through files. You used graph theory to map out the connections. Soon, the scattered puzzle pieces formed a terrifying mosaic. You realized the line between the government and organized crime isn't a wall, it's a revolving door. You saw wire transfers, encrypted threads, and off-the-books orders confirming the unthinkable. The agency wasn't fighting the cartels, they were managing them. The instability in conflict zones wasn't a policy failure. It was a feature, not a bug designed to keep the dark money flowing. You felt like a god watching the strings that move the world. But while you were deep in your rabbit hole, they were backtracing your digital footprint. Your ego made you sloppy. The CIA director didn't call the local cops, that's too much red tape. He sent a black ops team. Ghosts. No badges, no flags, no warrants. National sovereignty is just a suggestion to these people. They didn't knock. They breached your front door with a battering ram. The sound of splintering wood mixed with your foster parents' screams. They were zip-tied on the floor, clueless as to why their home was crawling with paramilitaries barking tactical jargon. The agents swarmed your room, ready to neutralize the asset. But all they found was the hum of servers and an empty chair. See, you're no amateur. Paranoia is a hacker's cardinal virtue. You'd rigged microcams on every streetlight in the block. You saw the blacked-out SUVs 3 minutes before they even pulled up. From a rooftop blocks away, you watched through binoculars. You saw your parents being dragged out like criminals for the crime of loving you. You watched your perfect life implode in real time. You'd lost everything again. But this time, you had the receipts on your hard drive. You're a ghost now, living in fleabag motels with roaches for roommates, leeching Wi-Fi from greasy spoons. But while your body's hiding, your mind is diving into the deepest, darkest servers on the planet. Every layer of encryption you peel back reveals the truth that CIA agent list just the teaser trailer. The main feature was the blueprint for global gaslighting. You found folders with sci-fi codenames, but R-rated outcomes. You realized the 6 p.m. news isn't reporting reality. It's a script written in Langley months in advance. Then there were the accidents. Politicians who had sudden brake failures. Or journalists who committed suicide by shooting themselves twice in the back. The agency's creativity for death was darkly peak. But the folder that really black-pilled you, the war on drugs. For years, they sold you the story that the US was fighting the cartels. The files said the opposite. They weren't fighting. They were white labeling. They funded and armed specific criminal groups to destabilize Latin America just to keep the status quo. Chaos isn't a glitch. It's the operating system. You had the power to nuke empires. Your first instinct, trade the data for your parents. But your logic kicked in. You don't negotiate with terrorists, especially the ones with federal badges. Try to cut a deal, and you aren't an interlocutor. You're just a loose end, waiting to be accidented. To save them, you had to stop being a lone wolf. You needed force multipliers. You needed allies with as much skin in the game as you. The vibe had shifted. This wasn't just a hack anymore. It was asymmetric warfare. You chopped your hair in a gas station bathroom and traded your designer drip for thrift store rags. You're a ghost now hiding in plain sight. You bounce from one greasy spoon to the next, IP hopping faster than the CIA's algorithms can trace your ping. You knew a solo run was a suicide mission. You needed backup. First, you needed clout. You tracked down a washed-up investigative reporter, a guy who was a heavy hitter, until he started asking the wrong questions about the defense budget and got nuked by the feds. Now he's a professional ghost, writing for a blog with zero engagement. You sent him a teaser, a low-level classified file. He bit the hook immediately, begging for a face-to-face. But you're not a noob. In this game, meeting in person is how you get bagged. You shut him down, strictly encrypted, self-destructing texts only. He folded. Now you had your mouthpiece. Next, you needed brute force. You dove into the dark corners of the web, the places Google won't show you. You pinged a syndicate of digital mercs. These weren't idealistic hacktivists. They were black hat pros who stole credit cards for the sport. The vibe was high-key tense. They didn't want cash. They wanted leverage. You offered them the crown jewels, the dirt on senators on the Hill who control the cybersecurity laws. In exchange, they gave you their massive botnet swarm for when the signal goes live. The deal was sealed. Truth in one hand, a global megaphone in the other. The board is set. Time to stop running and make the call that'll give DC a heart attack. Time to dance with the devil. You took a deep breath and dialed the number. The voice on the other end didn't sound like a monster. It sounded like a bored paper pusher. They fed you the "we want to cooperate" line, claiming your parents' safety was their top priority. They almost sold it. But then your trained ear caught it a slight audio lag. That wasn't a bad connection, it was a routing loop. They weren't negotiating. They were buying time to ping your exact tower. You slammed the phone down and let survival instinct take the wheel. You bolted out of the cafe and hopped on your bike. Your gut was prophetic. The second that engine roared, 3 black SUVs pulled a perfect pincer move, blocking the street. Agents hopped out with long guns, but you were already a blur on the horizon. The hunt was on. They had V8 torque and tactical training. You had pure desperation and a master's degree in urban infrastructure. The SUVs were gaining on the straights, their armored bumpers inches from your rear tire. You knew you couldn't outrun them, so you decided to outcode them. You remembered a fact most people ignore: modern cities run on SCADA systems, industrial control tech from the 80s, with basically zero security. Days ago, you'd scanned the city's traffic grid and found a back door wide open. You approached the city's biggest, deadliest intersection. With one pre-programmed command on your phone, you sent the signal. 0 lag. Your lane hit a bright green. For the cross-traffic, you forced a simultaneous green. You cleared the intersection at 60 mph. Behind you, the world turned into a symphony of screeching tires and twisted metal. Innocent drivers just following their green lights T-boned the CIA SUVs, creating a massive barricade of steel and smoke. While sirens and horns filled the air, you vanished into the alleys shielded by the beautiful chaos you just orchestrated. The adrenaline from the getaway turned into straight poison. You were fuming. If they wanted to play dirty, you were gonna blow up the whole board. From your hole-up, you triggered the Scorched Earth Protocol. You dumped the decryption keys to your allies, the Reporter and the Cyber Mercs. You sat back waiting for the PR apocalypse to hit. 1 hour, 2 hours, dead silence. The internet was business as usual. That quiet was scarier than the sirens. You tried to ping the reporter. Ghosted. You tried to crack into his smart home security, but the whole grid was dark. Offline. That's when you knew. You hijacked the neighbor's Ring camera across the street. The angle was perfect. The reporter's door swung open, and 3 guys in full hazmat suits walked out carrying industrial-grade black bags. These weren't CSI, these were the erasers. They'd flatlined the messenger and were hauling him out in pieces like medical waste. Panic set in. You played your last card to the cyber syndicate. You sent an SOS demanding the attack, but instead of a copy that, your personal firewall started screaming. Red alerts everywhere. They weren't DDoSing the government. They were backtracing your ass. In that split second reality hit you, you'd made the most basic rookie mistake. You believed in honor among thieves. Uncle Sam simply cut them a fatter check. They sold you out, and your head was the bonus. You were alone, backstabbed and boxed in. You weren't looking for a deal anymore. You were going for mutually assured destruction. From a server bounced through 12 different countries, you finally hit enter. In a flash, terabytes of toxic receipts flooded the inboxes of CNN, the BBC, and every major rag on the planet. But you knew editors could be muzzled. You needed something they couldn't gatekeep. You hacked the digital billboard networks. In Times Square, Shibuya, and Piccadilly, the soda ads vanished. In their place, pure, unadulterated, classified dirt. You hijacked the feed of live TV and NFL games. For 3 glorious minutes, you forced the world to look the truth in the face. But every packet you sent was a digital breadcrumb. By going viral, you became the brightest blip on the radar. The sirens were replaced by something nastier, the thwack-thwack of a chopper. You gunned it on your bike trying to lose them in the urban maze. You saw a narrow alley too tight for their SUVs. You thought it was your get-out-of-jail-free card. You pinned the throttle into the dark, thinking you'd out-finesse them. Wrong. You weren't escaping, you were being herded. That alley wasn't an exit. It was a tactical kill box. At the end, you didn't find freedom just a wall of riot shields and blinding high beams. They'd mapped your routes, predicted your meta, and set the trap before you even kicked the kickstand. A flash, a dull thud, and then lights out. GG. You're pinched. You sat in the back of the armored van, shackled and zip-tied. You were doing the math on your survival rate in a supermax federal prison. The result? A solid 0. You'd accepted your fate watching the sun through a slit in a concrete wall for the rest of your life. But the universe had one last plot twist. Suddenly, the world shook. A massive 18-wheeler came out of nowhere and T-boned the convoy, blocking the road like a wall of steel. You heard shots, not some street gang spray and pray, but the rhythmic surgical double taps of pros. Screams, then silence. The back doors were ripped open, letting in a blinding glare. 2 silhouettes stood there. One in shades, the other checking an assault rifle. The guy in shades looked at you like you were damaged goods. "Is this the brat?" The other nodded. "That's him. Move it, kid. Unless you want to wait around for the coroner." You didn't have a choice. You hopped into an unmarked black SUV. As you sped away from the wreckage, you finally spoke. "Who are you?" "Why the rescue?" The 2 men exchanged a look. "We're like you," the driver said. "People who saw the strings and got cancelled for trying to cut them." You smirked, feeling a flash of ego. "Well, at least we won. I leaked everything. Times Square the news. DC is cooked. The system falls tomorrow." The 2 men burst into a dry, cynical laugh. The guy in shades shook his head and tossed you a tablet. "Check the feed, kid." You stared at the screen in horror. No riots, no impeachments. The top trending topics were a Kardashian-level divorce and a new viral dance challenge. Your classified leaks. They'd been flagged as AI-generated deepfakes and buried by the algorithm in under 10 minutes. "Nobody gives a damn about the truth, kid," the man said. "People prefer a cozy lie over an uncomfortable reality. The game was rigged from the start." You felt a hollow pit in your stomach, worse than any beatdown. Your sacrifice meant nothing. The system didn't just control the crime, they controlled the perception of reality. 2 choices, the man continued. Hop out here and let the CIA find your body in an hour. Or come with us and learn to play the game for real from the shadows where nobody claps but where it actually matters. You looked out the window. The world kept spinning totally unbothered by your tragedy. You nodded slowly. Your new life had just begun. That's a wrap for today. I've got more deep dives and receipts to drop soon. Hit sub so you don't miss the next leak.